Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Day 3 of the nation's largest ever healthcare worker strike is coming to a close without a deal. Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Hoffman in for Maya Trabulsi. Negotiations between the union and Kaiser Permanente will not officially restart until next week, and there's a chance that workers could strike again. KPBS reporter Melissa May is live from the picket line in Kearny Mesa with an update. Melissa?
Matt, some of these workers have been out here since early this morning, and they've been getting a lot of support from the community. People are driving by and honking their horns, and I've even seen some non-striking Kaiser employees come out here. They've been saying that they are exhausted, but I have surprisingly high spirits, and as you can see, they're continuing to strike.
Outsourcing and understaffing are emerging as key points as the Kaiser Permanente strike continues. While Kaiser says some progress has been made, there's still not a finalized agreement. Over 300 workers gathered in front of the Kaiser Permanente San Diego Medical Center, including licensed vocational nurse Marisol Preller, who says the last few days have been challenging.
These 3 days went without pay. And everybody has bills, everybody has gas, the price of rent is going up, the price of living is going up, everything is going up. So this is a big sacrifice that we're making.
The strike goes until Saturday at 6 a.m., and if no agreement is reached, workers will return to work with no new contract. Bargaining is set for next Thursday, October 12th, and frontline workers are hoping that Kaiser executives are prepared to listen about issues that include safe staffing and fair wages to reduce turnover.
The coalition of Kaiser Permanente unions released a statement saying they may issue a 10-day strike notice on Saturday if an agreement is not reached. But when I reached out to coalition spokesperson, she could not confirm the possibility of another strike. As for any impacts to care at clinics and hospitals, Kaiser said they are directly reaching out to patients if they need to reschedule or cancel any appointments or procedures. Live from Kearny Mesa, Melissa May, KPBS News.
Thanks for that update, Melissa. Casa Familiar shut down their makeshift migrant aid center in San Isidro today. That's due to lack of funding. Since September, Customs and Border Protection personnel have dropped off 13,000 migrants on the streets of San Diego. Various nonprofits and mutual aid organizations use Casa Familiar's center to provide aid to some of these migrants. Many had no food, water, or even clothing. News of the center's closure comes as San Diego County leaders are considering allocating some funding, $3 million, for local nonprofits that provide these services to migrants on the U.S. side of the border. It's been a month since the Border Patrol began detaining migrants near Hakuma Hot Springs. And as KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer tells us, aid groups are saying that the situation there is growing more dangerous by the day.
It's mid-morning in Far East San Diego County, and a Santa Ana condition is baking the arid landscape. This area near Hakuma Hot Springs has become a temporary gathering place for migrants like Paulo Gomez Sanchez, who are enduring temperature swings from the 50s at night to the 90s during the day.
We come in cars and we cross the wall and come and walk.
Gomez Sanchez traveled from Colombia and is trying to reunite with his mother and aunt who live in San Diego. Like many people at the site, he was stressed, nervous, and confused.
I hope it's not much time. Yes, I hope it's go to my house because it's not easy. We are in the mountain.
Mutual aid groups say for weeks, Customs and Border Protection has detained thousands of migrants near Hakuma Hot Springs in what they're calling open-air detention sites. CBP pushes back on the use of the term, calling them gathering sites.
It started in May, and then it stopped for a few months, and then it started again about 2 weeks ago.
Sam Schultz now works with the nonprofit Border Kindness. He and his wife are the only local aid group providing supplies to the migrants 7 days a week. He says migrants are being held at 3 sites near Jacumba, and each day, more people are showing up.
We supply them almost all of the food and water that goes out there. The Border Patrol is supplying a very small amount at the best of their abilities, and I'm not want to be negative about them at all. They're doing the best they can, but they're just not set up for this. So we've been basically 90% of all of water and probably 100% of the food.
Schultz says CBP is also not providing proper medical care. A CBP spokesperson would not agree to an interview, but issued a statement saying the U.S. Border Patrol San Diego sector is currently experiencing irregular levels of migration between official ports of entry. This level of migration is spurred by criminal smuggling organizations who continue to exploit vulnerable migrant populations for profit. To address current migration patterns, the San Diego Sector Border Patrol is leveraging all available resources to encounter, transport, and process migrants as expeditiously and safely as possible, while simultaneously upholding other vital border security priorities. Schultz says the migrants are coming through gaps in the border wall. CBP detains them in the Jacumba camps for 1 to 3 days and marks them with the wristband before moving them to other centers in San Diego and Riverside counties. Schultz says they're reaching a breaking point.
We desperately need monetary donations really bad because this is getting out of control. We're at the point where we're stretched so far that we probably can't do this very much longer the way that it is. So we either need a bunch more money or we need the government to come in with the people that can actually deal with this.
Schultz added that the situation will become more dire as overnight temperatures grow increasingly cold and their local funding and donations dry up. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Well, the big story across the Southwest has been the heat, right? It has been hot, 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 and that's why the National Weather Service has issued heat advisories, especially across our more inland valleys. That's where it's going to be very hot. We're tracking where temperatures go over these next few days, how hot we're going to get even through the weekend before we do see a dramatic cool down.
Now, here's a follow-up to a story we told you last week about Palomar Health's problematic terms of use service for its website. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn says the Public Health Care District has since updated those terms.
As previously reported by Voice of San Diego and KPBS, visitors to Palomar's health website have to accept the terms of use in order to access the website.
The problem is this is written like they're a private agency, and they're just not.
Of particular concern for David Loy, the legal director for the nonprofit First Amendment Coalition, is the copyright clause. Previously, it forbade users from copying, reproducing, republishing, posting, retransmitting, or distributing information found on the site without permission. Loy says that's problematic because as a public agency, any records Palomar produces, such as meeting minutes and agendas, are public records and not subject to copyright. Palomar has since updated its copyright clause to say that information presented on the site is considered public domain unless otherwise indicated, and may be distributed or copied as permitted by law.
I appreciate that the district has clarified that public records belong to the public.
In a statement to KPBS, Palomar says asking user to agree to the terms of use is routine for any public agency. The only difference is that Palomar has chosen to be upfront about it. Most public agencies place the terms at the bottom of the website.
I appreciate the transparency. And it's certainly always better to be more transparent than not about terms of service.
Loy says public agencies should bear in mind that they are serving the public and the terms of service should reflect that. In addition, Palomar says asking the public to accept the terms of service helps protect the site from denial of service attacks. That's when hackers launch a large amount of traffic against the site, crashing the server. Nicholas Bahar is a cybersecurity professor at USD. He says having a pop-up could help DDoS attacks if there is a firewall between the pop-up and the server. We asked him to analyze the website, and this is what he found.
And it looks like this pop-up is being loaded from the same web server as the website, so it doesn't do a lot to try to prevent a distributed denial of service attack.
Palomar says it implemented the pop-up to benefit its patient and the district. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A street in Barrio Logan will be renamed tomorrow after Father Richard Brown, who died in 2020. KPBS reporter Katie Heisen has more about how the neighborhood priest came to mean so much to the community.
Father Richard Brown was white, but he earned the nickname El Padrecito del Barrio, the father of the neighborhood, and, affectionately, El Padre Café con Leche, Father Coffee with Milk. He arrived to serve at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Barrio Logan in the late 60s. At a time when some stigmatized the neighborhood for gang violence, Brown embraced the culture. He instituted the blessing of the lowriders, sprinkling holy water on their cars. He brought a mariachi band into Mass. He threw queen and court fiestas for the church. Adela Garcia, who's been at the church since Brown arrived, reminisces.
We have the best neighborhood in all of San Diego. It is rich with love, with talent, and a lot of people just don't know what a wonderful community this is to live in. He did.
Thinking of the street renaming brings tears to her eyes.
I get emotional because I think that he deserved that. He deserved for generations to come to say, who was this man named Father Brown? I hope that when people see that street sign, that they think about his work and that they say, what can I do to help?
After his live-streamed funeral during COVID lockdown, Garcia calls this a proper send-off. The celebration will kick off at 11 a.m. and include many of Brown's favorite things: food, oldies, and lowriders. Katie Heisen, KPBS News.
You can hear more about Father Brown from Adela Garcia as she shares memories of him in her own words. That story's on our website, kpbs.org. 12 years ago, a mosaic of the Virgin of Guadalupe surfing on a big wave surprised the city of Encinitas. Since then, the Surfing Madonna has evolved into more than just public art. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne has more on the artist's legacy.
In plain daylight and wearing bright construction vests, friends Mark Patterson and Bob Nichols set out to install what would become a controversial art piece in Encinitas. They told an inquiring firefighter they were taking measurements underneath the Encinitas rail bridge on the 101. But in reality, they were installing colorful tile mosaics that would form the Surfing Madonna, portraying the Virgin of Guadalupe on a surfboard surfing a large wave with the words "Save the Ocean" spelled out. Controversy over the art piece grew. It was the imagery, the placement, and the permission the anonymous artist failed to seek. The artist, Mark Patterson, was forced to reveal his identity.
The message that she was delivering from that wave was "Save the Ocean," and I think that message in particular is the focus for me of what the mosaic was intended to represent.
In an interview from 2011, Patterson told KPBS he assumed the railroad owned the pillar and the art piece wouldn't pose a problem.
To me, it looked like the perfect frame for the mosaic, and that's what really called me to it.
Alas, the Surfing Madonna had to be removed from the rail bridge, and it took a couple more moves until it found its final destination. It is now on display on the back wall of Lucadia Pizzeria facing Encinitas Boulevard.
Of course, we're mourning the loss of Mark Patterson, passed away just not too long ago. He did so much for the world and the community. He did great things throughout the world, really. He was a noted artist, but this is his one famous piece, his first incredible piece. He knocked it out of the park.
Mike Redman is the vice president of the Surfing Madonna Oceans Project. The nonprofit organization was created following the fame of the Surfing Madonna mosaic.
The Surfing Madonna Oceans Project has gone on to do all kinds of great things for the community. They put on the world's largest beach run, the Encinitas Half Marathon, and of course our special needs surf camps throughout the summer. These surf camps get kids in the water who normally wouldn't get there.
The organization also holds art shows that support clean oceans, a legacy born out of a spontaneous gift of art.
It just blossomed, as we may know. It's got worldwide attention. I don't think he had any idea what was going to happen.
Despite Patterson's death, Redmond says the legacy of the Surfing Madonna will live on, and he invites the community to its forever home.
I want to say, please come check out the Madonna. Bring books, bring books. We need books for the Little Free Library. And please come check out the Madonna.
A celebration of Mark Patterson's life will be held at Lucadia Pizzeria on Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
This week, KPBS is spotlighting climate change solutions. Reporter Katie Hyson looked at how a community garden in City Heights is healing a patch of land and the people who tend to it.
Auto shops crowd the corner of University Avenue and 39th Street in City Heights. But if you turn down the alley behind a Valvoline oil change, you'll find a once abandoned lot blooming with life. The Revolutionary Growers Garden is run by the local Black Panther Party.
We just planted some potatoes and they started sprouting and they look real nice, and flowers and squash and...
That's Gardener Day's dream. They're non-binary and have chosen that name.
This garden has absolutely transformed my relationship with the earth in like the most beautiful way.
Community members care for the garden together and teach each other.
Sometimes I come here and then I learn something, and then like 20 minutes later someone asks me a question and it's the same thing that I just learned, so I told them what I just learned. So it's like we're really just like trading information all the time.
They eat what they grow and say it tastes better than grocery store produce. It doesn't travel by truck or sit in a refrigerator. Often it's straight from the ground to their mouths.
We had like a watermelon growing and we cut it open. We were so excited. We shared it with everyone. We just like slurped that up and it was so good. If there's more than we can take home, then we just knock on the neighbors' doors and we just like, hey, do you want any squash or tomatoes?
Dream imagines this knowledge spreading.
Like, it would be so beautiful if we had this garden not just in every like city, but like on every block, you know, like, and to feed the community in that block.
We're only using party members' chosen names in this story because they're concerned about being targeted by law enforcement. They say knowing how to grow your own food is vital for neighborhoods like City Heights that are expected to be overburdened by climate change. Fiel, another gardener and a Black Panther Party member, explains.
As climate change progresses, fruits and vegetables are going to become more expensive because, especially in California, in Southern California, they need more water, and we're just not going to have it.
She says she can get a couple weeks of produce from the garden's harvests, saving her money at the grocery store. Gardening, she says, is
protecting your right to have a healthy diet.
The garden builds the neighborhood's resilience to climate change in other ways, too. The plants absorb sun, helping lower temperatures that are commonly higher in lower-income communities of color like City Heights that have fewer trees and more asphalt. And unlike asphalt, the soil retains water and reduces runoff, which may become increasingly necessary as San Diego experiences unusually heavy rains. And Fiel says, working together in a garden helps build trust between neighbors.
If you're constantly feeling like you're in competition with your neighbors or you have to defend yourself against people who live down the street from you, it doesn't enhance your quality of life.
And the gardeners are not just making the neighborhood more resilient. They're healing this plot of earth and changing how they relate to the rest of it.
So even though we have some really huge spiders and they're really scary, they're also very important to the garden. So you have to leave them alone and let them do their thing. So it teaches a lot of respect.
They grow a variety of crops in each bed, unlike most big farms that grow one crop and deplete the soil. They avoid tilling, which releases carbon into the atmosphere. They compost and make natural insect repellents instead of using synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. These practices contrast with large-scale food production, which is estimated to create 1/4 of global carbon emissions. Coyote, a Panther Party member and gardener, says he's noticed the garden becoming less predictable.
There's less kind of stability, and I think that's what you notice the most. Yeah, I can't ever be like, well, last year in January this happened. It's like, well, every January is a new January.
He says this garden alone won't fix the climate crisis, but it's something most people can do.
This isn't going to be the thing that does it, right? This is one small part, but it is a small part that you can engage in.
The gardeners invite anyone to come learn how to plant seeds and grow a movement on their own block. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines, what you need to know as we head into the weekend. Yes, it is Friday. Let's start you off with number one on our list. Heat advisory, though, through Saturday evening. It's still going to be quite toasty, particularly for areas more inland across the inland valleys. That's where we're going to be tracking that extreme heat. But low humidity is also going to be making it very dry, too, as well. Though we are going to start on a cooling trend. It's going to be gradual. It's going to start from the coast, but we will start to see those temperatures drop. But until we get there, we still have a heat advisory in effect across inland areas, across parts of San Bernardino County, down through the San Diego valleys, and even pushing a little bit further inland, including Ramona as well. Again, that heat advisory stays in effect until Saturday evening, so make sure that you are taking precautions and taking care of yourself in the heat. Make sure, again, you're taking plenty of cooling breaks and also drinking plenty of water. All right, let's take you to Metro down tonight. We're dropping down to a low of 61. 56 in Oceanside, San Diego 61, Ramona's 58, and Borrego Springs 65. But that warm air sticks around even through Sunday as we are dealing with unseasonably warm air pushing in across a lot of the west, 10 to 20 degrees above the historical averages in a few areas, including the southwest, with record highs challenge along the California coast. So again, it has been very warm. I mean, San Diego hitting a high of 81, Oceanside 82, Borrego Springs flirting with 100 as we head into our day tomorrow. But let's take you along the coast where we'll see that gradual cool down, right? We're in the 80s Saturday and Sunday. We're cooling off for the beginning of the week, at least down to the 70s. And then as we head a little bit further inland, well, you'll also experience a cool down. We're in the 90s throughout the weekend, but then we're going to start to see temperatures drop through the beginning of the week. 78 by Tuesday, Wednesday 78 as well. And by Sunday for the mountains, well, we're dropping a few degrees even by Sunday, but we're really going to start to cool down by Monday, down to the low 60s through Wednesday, and we'll see that slight cool down too as well in the deserts, dropping down to the low 90s by the middle of next week. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
This week's strike by Kaiser workers is about more than health care. SDSU's Miro Kopik explains how this is part of a significant year for organized labor in the Friday Business Report.
This is the largest healthcare strike in history. 75,000 Kaiser healthcare workers went out on strike on Wednesday for 3 days. Kaiser's had, and many other healthcare organizations have had significant worker shortages since 2020, 2021. Now, for the overall market, this has been a huge year for strikes overall. We've seen strikes currently with the auto workers. We saw every pilot union go on strike or threaten to go on strike for better wages. The writer's strike, which lasted for 5 months, just ended. And the actors' strike, which is now 3 months old, is still not resolved. So what we're seeing is, for the first time in decades, consumer opinion about unions is actually very proactive. You know, there's a lot of language around, unions aren't good, especially promulgated by business, but consumers and individuals are saying, look, you know what? Everyone should be paid a fair wage.
Bruce Springsteen has announced rescheduled U.S. tour dates, including a concert here in San Diego. Last month, the 74-year-old musician canceled the rest of his 2023 shows, and that was over some health issues that he had. Springsteen had originally been scheduled to perform at Pechanga Arena on December 2nd. Now he'll play at the arena on March 25th, and all tickets for the postponed performances can be used for these new dates. The Exorcist turns 50 this year, and a new film in the franchise is opening today. KPBS Cinema Junkie reporter Beth Accomando has this review of The Exorcist Believer.
David Gordon Green began his career on a high note, creating the indie darling George Washington. But what possessed him to now take on directing a sequel to The Exorcist?
The power of Christ compels you!
Well, one of the things people ask me is, was it daunting to take this movie that every movie lover around the world knows this title, right? And to be the steward of a sequel to it, how dare you? And for me, it's a huge opportunity. It's the idea of being able to make something that has that reach, has the capacity to reach millions of viewers, get their attention, and make something that's meaningful to me.
A huge opportunity, especially considering he managed to lure Ellen Burstyn back for the first time in 50 years to reprise her role as Chris McNeil.
Powerhouse opportunity to be able to not just convince her that she should be in our movie, but to become a collaborator of hers and to be inspired by her. We really had a wonderful time working together. And I think once I had her trust and she saw my intentions of making something that was more of a theological thriller than a contemporary horror movie, I think she was very intrigued by that.
Well, a theological thriller does sound intriguing, but Believer is not sure what it believes in. The original The Exorcist believed in a pair of priests who might have been flawed, but there was no doubt they were good men trying to save an innocent soul. But Believer dismisses both religion and science in favor of the idea that it takes a village to fight evil.
What do you think evil is?
And when something is unexplainable, it's nice to have a movie that can express those dramas and those horrors.
Believer expresses little drama and even less horror. It covers familiar terrain in uninspired ways and wastes its only asset, Ellen Burstyn.
And the devil never gives up.
And neither does a studio in search of a profit. But Universal spent $400 million for the rights to the franchise. And if this first film in its planned trilogy tanks, maybe we won't have to suffer through the rest. So my advice? Just go watch the original The Exorcist, or seek out When Evil Lurks, the relentlessly bleak and brilliant Argentinian demonic possession film that Shudder is sneaking into theaters this weekend next to the inferior The Exorcist Believer. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Matt Hoffman. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.